Yet again, for you bozos that keep bringing it up, that's not the criteria for the playoff. They want the 4 best teams. It doesn't matter what should happen, what's right and what's not right, and who's the most deserving. That doesn't matter. They want the 4 best teams. I think Florida State, I truly believe this. With Jordan Travis, they were a top 4 team and they were a national title contender. They had elite talent on defense, elite weapons on offense. Keon Coleman is one of, if not the best wide receivers in all the country outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. This could have been a special year for Florida State if Jordan Travis didn't get hurt. But however, the bottom line is he did get hurt and you're no longer a top 4 team. All right, man, look, I'm just going to come out and say, we're not doing no intro, none of that. I ain't got time to waste. You ain't got time to waste either. I got a bone to pick. I saw a video last night from Kirk Herbstreit. I'll just show you a picture right here. I'm not going to show you the entire interview because there's no point. To make an extremely long story short, Kirk Herbstreit just stated that the goal of the committee isn't to get it quote-unquote right and put the 4 most quote-unquote deserving teams. It's to put the 4 best teams. Kirk Herbstreit went on a huge rant and tangent just saying that, how he spoke to Bill Hancock about it, and that's the mission of the playoff. And I wanted to start on this video by sharing you Kirk Herbstreit's perspective so you don't just think I'm the only one who's saying this. Everybody with common sense is pointing this out. The only reason people like me, Kirk Herbstreit, and many others are upset by these rankings is because the committee isn't doing what they said they were going to do years ago. And yet again, let me find this other receipt. Oh, got it right here from Joel Klatt. If you think I'm the only person thinking this. If you want to say Matt doesn't know what he's talking about, cool. I'll show you what Joel Klatt had to say. The idea that a room full of administrators, for the most part, are the best we can do to rank the CFP teams is probably laughable. These rankings are just silly. And you know what? Let me find another tweet from Joel Klatt because I think he put out his top 10. Yeah, here it is right here. Even Joel Klatt understands it. Look at where he's got Florida State. At number 8, where they should be. Joel Klatt doesn't think Florida State's that great of a team without their quarterback, and the same thing for Kirk Herbstreit. And I know many of you watching this video, you highly respect their opinions. The problem with Florida State currently is the same problem we had with TCU last year. Nobody thought TCU was a top 4 team, but it was like, they won their game, so I guess we got to put them in there. And just like this comment says right here, it's the word everybody's using when describing Florida State. They deserve to be there. I can't harp on this enough. If that was a criteria of the college football playoff, yes, then they should be in. But the problem with this is, as they've stated for years, that's not the criteria. The criteria is, we don't care about your record, we want the 4 best teams. And if you want the 4 best teams, there's no reason, none, to have Florida State currently at number 4. And it's not just the fact you got them at 4, they shouldn't be ahead of Oregon, Texas, Ohio State, or Bama. It's beyond stupid and laughable. And check out this reply right here talking about Kirk Herbstreit on what he had to say. Herbstreit is right. You can't tell me if Alabama beats Georgia that Alabama and Georgia aren't 2 of the top 4 teams in the country. The goal should be to put the 4 best teams in, and you can't tell me Florida State without Jordan Travis is a top 4 team. And oh, wait a minute. Why don't you take a look at this from Miss Heather Dinich here? Here's what she posted on Twitter. CFP Executive Director Bill Hancock said the committee's job is to rank the 4, in all caps, best teams. Continuing along, and that quote-unquote most deserving is not anything in the committee's lexicon. I've never seen that word in my life, whatever that means. After that word, they're there to rank the best teams in order, and that's what they do, so just keep that in mind. You see right here from the CFP Executive Director, Bill Hancock himself, their goal is to rank the 4 best teams. So why in the crap is Florida State ranked ahead of Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Alabama? Why? The CFP committee is currently not doing their job. I'm going to highlight this for you for all these people saying, well, Matt, if Florida State wins out, they deserve to be in. Yet again, for you bozos that keep bringing it up, that's not the criteria for the playoff. They want the 4 best teams. It doesn't matter what should happen, what's right and what's not right, and who's the most deserving. That doesn't matter. They want the 4 best teams. I'm beyond sick and tired of these casuals that do not understand that. And you got people saying, well, if they leave out FSU at 13-0, why do we even play the games? Well, maybe it has a little something to do with, and I hate this happened, but it's reality, you lost your star quarterback. These Florida State fans act like it's just because this happened to them. No, if this happened to any team in the top 8 that we're talking about potentially making the playoff, it'd be the same conversation. It just so happened to happen to Florida State. Y'all want to know something? When Quinn Ewers was hurt, what did I do in my rankings? I moved back Texas to number 8, and when he came back, I bumped him up because they're a different team without him. It's the same thing for every single team. Same thing for Oregon, Washington, Texas, All these teams in the top 8, they lose their starting quarterback. Yes, I'm going to derank them, and I'm going to take that against them. Or not take that against them, but I meant to say take that into account against them, but you get the point. And a lot of these Florida State fans are also saying, oh, well, they're trying to punish us for our quarterback getting hurt. And no, the reality is you're just not one of the 4 best teams. And in my humble opinion, you're not one of the best 7 teams. I got you at number 8, same thing as Joe Klatt. Look, man, the harsh reality is, and I hate it for the Cinnamon Roll fan base, I really do, you're not the same team without Jordan Travis. You're not. Your defense is just fine, but your offense, we saw it against Florida. Not very good. And you may skim by Louisville and beat them, but guess what? Louisville's not very good, and if they were in the SEC, they'd probably be 5-7. I have a hard time believing Louisville would have won 6 games in the SEC, considering they lost to Kentucky, and that's a bottom feeder in the SEC. What a lot of people have failed to realize is it's 2023. This is a quarterback-driven sport. And it's especially a quarterback-driven sport when your team, Florida State, relies on your quarterback. Yeah, they can run the ball, and I love me some Trey Benson. That dude's unreal. But come on, man. For you to sit up here and act like Florida State runs the ball 80% of the game and the quarterback's not going to matter too much, you've lost your mind. My point is their defense isn't good enough to overcome the lack of talent right now currently at the quarterback position. And that's not me trying to disrespect and throw shade and shots at Tate Rodemaker, but it's just reality. I think he's more than capable to game manage a game, but he's not going to win you a national championship. He's not good enough to beat a team like Georgia. Heck, I don't even think Rodemaker is good enough to beat a team like Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Oregon, and so on. Against Florida, and we're talking about, yet again, another bottom feeder in the SEC, he looked like a deer in headlights. Granted, it was a rival matchup, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm talking about the entirety of the offense. It looked out of sorts with him back there. And you got all these delusional FSU fans trying to make this statement and claim, oh, Matt Wood's a team sport. Like, what? Okay, I know that. But it goes back to this. There's a reason we talk so much about quarterbacks in the NFL and the collegiate level. Because at the very end of the day in a close game, that's going to be the determining factor whether you win or lose big-time games. We can apply the same logic to Alabama, right? They was one of the most talented teams in the nation at the start of the season, but there was some questionable play at the quarterback position, and it resulted in a loss. In college football, we've seen it with Georgia before they won their 2 national championships. You could have one of the most talented teams in the country, but if the quarterback play is behind that talent and it doesn't live up to par with that same talent, it's not going to amount to a hill of beans. If Florida State somehow, someway sneaks into this playoff, they will get exposed, or Tate Rodemaker will. Because sure, you may be able to hide them against Florida and Louisville because they're not very good teams, but when you get into the playoff, you're playing good teams. It would just be one of the most disastrous mistakes by putting Florida State into the playoff the committee would ever make. And think about this, honestly. What even about Florida State's resume, if you wanted to use that, what about their resume, strength of schedule, or strength of record tells you they should be ranked number 4? I'm asking you a genuine question because out of all the top 8 teams, they've had the easiest schedule up until this point. I'm actually curious to see their schedule yet again, and I know they beat LSU, and that was a good win, okay? I'll give you that. You beat LSU, but what has happened after that game? You struggled against a piss-poor Boston College team, 31-29. I remember watching that game. Boston College had 18 penalties and still almost won. You sneak out a nail-biter against a underperforming and underwhelming Clemson team in overtime. And then after that, I will give them credit. After those 2 nail-biters, they took care of business. But here's the thing. Yes, they've taken care of business, but who did you play? Virginia Tech, awful. Syracuse, awful. Duke, awful. They're winning 6 games in the SEC, maybe 7. Wake Forest, awful. Pittsburgh, awful. Miami, awful. North Alabama, awful. And Florida, awful. You haven't played anybody. Putting them in the playoff would be the equivalent of putting Gonzaga at the number 1 seed in March Madness. There's no reason to do it because they had a cupcake schedule. Look, man, Florida State isn't just not a top 4 team. They're not even a top 7 team. And as to why they're at number 4 in these most recent rankings blows my mind. And it just goes to show this committee doesn't know what they're doing. And Florida State fans aren't going to be happy with this because nobody is. Nobody wants to hear somebody talk bad about their team. And I'm not talking bad about your team if you interpret that way. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. I think Florida State, I truly believe this. With Jordan Travis, they were a top 4 team and they were a national title contender. They had elite talent on defense, elite weapons on offense. Keon Coleman is one of, if not the best wide receivers in all the country outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. This could have been a special year for Florida State if Jordan Travis didn't get hurt. But however, the bottom line is he did get hurt. And you're no longer a top 4 team. I have to evaluate Florida State now as a team who is being led by Tate Rodemaker. And I don't know if the kid can be good or not. We haven't seen a large enough sample size. I'm not going to throw him in the dirt. It's more so of I haven't seen anything out of him. And I can guarantee you this, and Florida State fans, you might not agree with anything I say in this video, but you should agree with this. He's not better than Jordan Travis currently. I'm sure he's got some talent. He didn't get to Florida State for no reason, but right now he looks like a deer in headlights. And if Florida State beats Louisville, which I expect them to do just because they're more talented and Louisville's a mediocre team at best, they will get exposed in the playoffs. And the bottom line is, if you think a team's going to get exposed in the playoffs, they shouldn't even be sniffing the playoffs. I just couldn't imagine Florida State gets in, and let's say Georgia beats Alabama, and Texas is the odd man left out. You mean to tell me you think Florida State, what, Tate Rodemaker is better than Quinn Ewers in Texas? Get out of here. And I'll give you that scenario so you can say, oh, Matt's just mad Bama ain't going to get in. Dude, this has nothing to do with Alabama. This is a Florida State video. I will tell you right now, Alabama isn't even supposed to beat Georgia. That's clear and obvious. We're a huge underdog. I'm talking about Florida State shouldn't get in over a team like Texas or even Ohio State. So screw the Bama talk. We can take the whole, if you want to say, quote-unquote, Bama bias out of it if you want. What are you going to say now? Matt's a Texas and Ohio State fan? I mean, come on, man. You just sound dumb when you bring that up. Florida State's fraudulent. Soon enough, people will realize that, whether it's after the Louisville game or after they get their butt whooped in the playoff. People will realize it was a mistake having them this high. Let me know your thoughts down below about that.